You're listening to The Voluntary Life, where you can hear ideas for finding freedom in an unfree world. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to connect with the show and hear all past episodes. Here's your host, Jake.
Hi everyone, it's Jake here. Welcome to The Voluntary Life. This is an episode about the big decisions in entrepreneurship. When you start a business, you have a constant stream of decisions to make. And so much to do, it's quite overwhelming. There's just constant decisions to be made. I've been thinking about the difference between the little decisions that don't have long-term consequences and the big decisions that have really huge repercussions for your whole business and for the whole experience of entrepreneurship. And I'm thinking about this because I'm actually writing a book about the big decisions in entrepreneurship and how to be more conscious about those decisions so that you can have as much freedom in making the choices about those decisions as possible. And I'm interested in this topic because I want to be as conscious as possible in making big decisions in entrepreneurship and in life generally. And I think there's a lot that can be learned about the way that you approach these big decisions so that you can make better decisions next time. That's what I'm trying to do, is to learn from my own experience of what went well in big decisions that I've made and what went badly. In this episode, I'm going to talk about what I think the big decisions are. And in a future episode, I would like to talk about things that have helped me make big decisions either better or not so well. So things that have helped me to make big decisions more consciously or not. But I'll come on to that in another episode, because I think at first it would be useful just to really run down what I think the big decisions are. And I'm really interested to hear your views about this as well, and your own experiences in terms of entrepreneurship, what you think the really important decisions are. That it's sometimes hard to see the wood for the trees. You know, it's hard to actually see what those important decisions are when you're in the thick of it all. So what I mean by big decisions are the ones that are going to have long-term consequences. And they're also ones that you kind of have to make a decision about anyway, even if you, just by inaction, you don't consciously decide to do something about this. You end up, by default, having made a decision through inaction, if you like. There are some things to do with entrepreneurship that you've got to make a decision about, that everyone faces in their business. And I think these big decisions are also a real opportunity for you to express your own creativity and your own individuality through your business. The way that each of us chooses to approach these big decisions, and the way that each of us chooses to answer the kind of really big questions, is a chance to really express ourselves in the way that we create our businesses and in what we choose to do about these big decisions. Whatever you choose to do, there are consequences, of course, that you have to live with, but there's an art involved in weighing up those consequences, and I think that's a real opportunity to express our individuality as well. So in the book, I'm going to write about each of these big decisions or big questions in quite a lot of detail, and I won't go into detail in this podcast, but I thought it might be interesting just to give you an overview of what I think the big decisions are. And I'd be really interested to hear what you think about these as a choice of the sort of big decisions, and also to hear any feedback you have about this as a sort of structure of the book. What I'd like to do is give you an overview of what I think some of the big questions or big decisions are to think about. The first is deciding on your motive. This is to ask yourself the question of why you are an entrepreneur, why you want to be an entrepreneur, what your motivation is for yourself. I find it really helpful to separate out what my personal motivation is from the purpose of the business itself. And I have found that the more I understand my own motivation, the easier it is for me to make sure that the experience of entrepreneurship is fulfilling for me, and that I get a sense of satisfaction from the whole experience. So understanding what your motives are is really key. And this is something I'm going to go into detail in the book that I'm writing. I'm going to talk about the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, and ways of being conscious about your own motivations. The next big question everyone faces as an entrepreneur is deciding the purpose of your business. Why does this particular business exist? What is the purpose of the business? What's it for? The more conscious you are about this, I've found the more coherence your business has as a whole. It's a really, really vital thing to understand what the point of your business is, what you're trying to do. I'm going to talk about this in the book as well. And for me, this is really about understanding how you are trying to provide value to other people. What is it that you're going to do that is going to contribute to making other people's lives better? Every business ultimately has to provide value, and that's the purpose. So making a clear decision about what the fundamental purpose of your business is really helps you to have direction and to have forward momentum, and for everyone to be able to cohere around the purpose of the business. The next really big decision, and one that I think is super important to be conscious about, is deciding about business partners. Are you going to go into business with other people, or are you going to do it alone? And if you are going to go into business with other people or alone, why? What's the reason for you and your co-founders going into business together? The more that you are conscious about what it is that you want from your business partners, or what you expect the benefits to be of working, of co-founding together with others, the more you can avoid the kind of fallouts and tensions and stress that are so typical in entrepreneurship between co-founders. And I've done some podcasts on this before, and this is something I've written about in the book, and it's really looking at, what the benefits and the problems are of co-founding with other people, what you can hope to gain through having a division of labor and through drawing on the potential for diversity of skills and of networks and connections, and also what the pitfalls are and the difficulties of co-founding with other people. But it's something that a lot of people just jump into without really being conscious about that decision. And that's something I think the more conscious you can be, the better decision you can make about whether or not to go into business with other people. It's a really, really huge decision. So the next decision that I'm focusing on is deciding on the finance of the venture. And this is really about how you fund the initial period. Do you want investment or funding for your business? And if so, why? Why do you need as much money as you think you need? How are you planning to finance the venture? This is one of those decisions where there are lots and lots of options of how you proceed with your business. There's no need to assume that you're going to need a set amount of money just to do it one way. There's lots of ways that you can finance your venture, whether it's through revenue finance or through some kind of advanced selling like crowdfunding, or whether it is through taking on investment of some kind, whether that's through simply friends and family and personal loans, or whether or not it's through selling equity. There's lots and lots of different options there, but it's very easy, I think, to just assume, I want to start a business, so I need money. How am I going to get money, and how am I going to get as much as possible? That's certainly the place that I started from, and I'm now a lot more aware of what the scope of options are about the question of finance and about how to approach it. The next big question I think everyone faces is, how are you going to sell? How are you going to make money? And indeed, why will any customer actually want to give you money? What will be the customer's motivation for paying you? So this is really looking at how you're going to bring in revenue and understanding what your relationship is with your customers. And it's one of those things where it evolves, and you definitely need to learn from customers in this process. It's a real learning process, but being conscious about how you intend to sell and how you see the sales process working for the customer, why they're going to want to give you money, is a really, really key question. Something I'm going to talk about a lot in the book. The next big decision that you face, and you sort of face this all the way through the business as you do with all these questions, but just to state it as a question, it's deciding on the design of your operations. Why are you working in the way that you work? using the tools that you do, using the processes that you do, and the procedures that you do. The temptation is to recreate your last job, or the job where you got the skills to do the work that your business is going to do. But the opportunity when you become an entrepreneur is to really design a workflow, to work on your business rather than in it, and to create a workflow that gives you the scalability and efficiency to actually make some money and to do things in a highly efficient way, not necessarily the way that you have previously done it before. And this is where it's really important as well to extract yourself from the operations of the business as the business owner. So that's something I'm going to write about in more detail, but I think it's a very interesting question to ask yourself and keep asking yourself, why are you working in the way that you're working? Why is your operation designed in this way? Using those tools, those bits of software, those people and procedures and standards and protocols and so forth. The next big decision is deciding about profit. How are you going to make a profit? How much profit are you actually going to make? And how are you going to do it? I think it's really important to be as conscious as possible about what your approach to profitability is, and not just cross your fingers and hope, and not just work really hard and hope, but actually make a conscious decision about how profitable you want this business to be and how you intend to create that profitability. The next big decision is deciding about growth. And the question here is, what is your approach to growth? Why do you want to grow the company? It's very easy to assume that you just want your company to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But bigger always means more complex. And more complex generally means a lot more stressful and difficult. If you want to create a business in order to fulfill a specific purpose, to provide value to other people, and also in order to make a profit, then growth should really be enhancing those two things and helping you to fulfill your purpose and to make increased profit and indeed increased profit margin. Often growth is the opposite, actually reduces the profit margin, and it also takes you further away from your original purpose. So I think it's really important to be conscious of what your attitude to growth is and why. And the last big decision that we all have to face as entrepreneurs is deciding how you're going to exit. Now, some people may not think about exiting their business because they might think, well, I love what I do and I want to just carry on doing this. But everyone leaves their business at some point. I mean, it's just a fact of life that we all grow old and we all stop being able to work at some point. So you're either talking about exiting through selling your business, or you're talking about developing some kind of succession plan, or you're talking about turning it into a passive income model that's somehow run by other people that you just still really take a very backseat role with. Or you're talking about just carrying on until you get tired and literally ceasing operations. But one way or another, you will exit the business, and it's worthwhile being really conscious about what you want that exit to look like. So those are the big decisions that everyone faces in entrepreneurship as I see them. As I say, I'd be really interested to hear any thoughts you have about this, or any suggestions you have for things that I've missed that you think are really, really big decisions that we have to ask ourselves important, deep questions about in order to be conscious as entrepreneurs, to be as aware as possible of what we're doing, and to get to enjoy the whole process, to have as much freedom as possible, and for your business to be a real expression of your individuality, an expression of choices that you've made because of the kind of person you are, not something that just happened by default without you getting to really make a clear decision about these things because you just got blown along by the pressure of work and the need to meet deadlines and so forth. That pressure exists for all of us, and it's very, very easy to get lost in the day-to-day details and to forget the really, really key questions that you have to answer. So I hope that's helpful. I'd love to hear any feedback you have. Lastly, I'd just like to let you know that if you've enjoyed this podcast, I think you'd really enjoy my book, Becoming an Entrepreneur: How to Find Freedom and Fulfillment as a Business Owner. The book is a no-nonsense guide that demystifies entrepreneurship and provides you with everything you need to break your employee conditioning and become an entrepreneur. You can find the book on Amazon if you search for my name, Jake Desyllas, that's Desyllas, and you can also find out more information about the book on the website, thevoluntarylife.com. Just look under the tab marked Books. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening to The Voluntary Life. If you have feedback about the show, please email jake@thevoluntarylife.com. If you enjoyed this program, please share the podcast with your friends or click the donate button on thevoluntarylife.com.